this money that they're talking about, that they're bragging about around here, the infrastructure funds that came from ARPA, how come you opposed all of the bills that gave money to Tennessee that funded all these projects that everybody loves around here? Why did you oppose all of those?
Because only 10% went to infrastructure.
What did the rest go to?
Woke programs that you and your followers
like.
like.
What does woke mean, Tim?
Remember when MAGA stooge Tim Burchett got confronted by Tennessee Holler reporter Justin Canoe?
What is woke?
You are woke.
Yeah, what does that mean?
Oh,
what's your definition?
Offensive.
Offensive to you?
No, offensive
anything
to 90%.
That offends Tim Burchett? Isn't that most things? You seem to be offended by everything, Tim.
Most people are just offended by you.
In case you didn't know, he's an anti-woke crusader and budget hawk who hates materially benefiting his constituents, preferring to bow down to Donald Trump and wage the right-wing culture war instead.
You can't see the hand of God in this, then you're just not looking. Honestly, he is a sincere man of God. He's not one of these bumper sticker Christians.
Case in point, this was his reaction after helping Christian fascist Mike Johnson ascend to the speakership last year, lauding him as a true man of God, while ignoring his support for mass deportations of undocumented immigrants, stripping women of their reproductive freedom, and discriminating against the LGBTQ plus community, just to name a few of MAGA Mike's policy positions.
Isn't obstructing easy? Isn't that the easy way out for $174,000 a year just to say no to everything? Can't anybody do that? Can't we send a chair up there to do that, Tim? You could just send a chair up there to do that.
An empty chair would be infinitely more useful in Congress in Burchett's place and would legitimately help the people of Tennessee more than Burchett and the Republicans ever could, which brings us to this.
This is what happens when you don't put the best players in. It's a complete failure on our part.
Speaking on the failed Trump assassination attempt, Burchett will invoke the right wing's new favorite dog whistle when referring to Secret Service Director Kimberly Cheadle.
How the hell did he get on top of that roof? If you look at the pictures, he didn't go through the top of the roof. There had to be a ladder or something. Somebody really dropped the ball. You've got a DEI, basically a DEI initiative person who heads up our Secret Service. She was working at Pepsi before this. I know she was a former Secret Service agent, but still.
And there it is. To Burchett and his fellow Republicans, gun laws aren't to blame. Our country's gun culture isn't to blame. Our country's heinously underfunded mental health system is not to blame. And the failings of individual local and federal law enforcement agents are not to blame either. So the only possible answer to explain the attack is government DEI hiring initiatives. Once the Republicans figured out DEI is the perfect catch-all phrase to mask their racism under the guise of supporting meritocracy, their charged anti-DEI rhetoric has skyrocketed over the past 6 months or so. While typically employed against the black community to use racial slurs against them, Burchett has proven that the dog whistle has evolved to describe anything that conservatives disagree with and anyone who they think has failed them, like Secret Service Director Kimberly Cheadle. We're not running cover for the nefarious actions of the State Department or commenting on Cheadle's politics, but by Burchett's own admission, she's a former Secret Service agent with almost 30 years of experience and most recently served as an assistant director before returning as director in 2022. On paper, she is more than qualified for the position she has, but because she is in charge when the events took place, Republicans like Burchett can now shift the narrative away from the motivations and culpability of the shooter directly to Joe Biden and the people his administration has hired.
You know, when we talk about the rhetoric that's going on, it's kind of ironic that in a sickening way that CNN making comparisons to President Trump and comparing him to Hitler. You have Democrat representatives who called for tried to pass legislation, 9 of them, in fact, to take President Trump's Secret Service detail away from him.
Get ready to hear this talking point a lot more frequently as Burchett and his Republican colleagues are trying to rewrite history in front of our eyes by making us forget that their rhetoric's sole objective is to incite fear and paranoia against the other.
We've got to secure our dadgum border, Matt. I think people are irate with the crime, the rape, the things that are going on, out and everywhere I go. The border situation to me is probably the most infuriating when they see jobs being taken, they see crime happening, and they know it's our National Chamber of Commerce. And again, our own party, we're in the majority. Dadgummit, we ought to be sticking it to them. and they really aren't seeing that.
President Biden's $7.3 trillion budget proposal for fiscal year 2025 is full of costly woke policies that will end up hurting the Americans who elected us to office. Even if Americans don't pay more in taxes, they will pay for this plan somehow. If we don't do them any good unless they want to get one of these new government jobs that will focus on climate change or diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Burchett has had DEI on his mind for a long time now, even participating in a recent congressional hearing where House Republicans tried to discredit DEI hiring initiatives as inherently discriminatory and racist.
Attorney General Rakita, following George Floyd's death, there were many companies that made promises to hire and promote more black folks and others from underrepresented groups. Does that sound familiar?
Yes, Congressman.
Well, what do you think of those promises?
We look for diversity. I want diversity of thought. It makes for better cases. It makes for better arguments. It makes for better attorneys. It makes for better office. But I'm not going to do that by discriminating against another person. That is against the law. It's against Title VII. And it's short-sighted and ignorant.
I often say, put the best player in, coach. That's what we need. In your written statement, you said that so-called war on woke is a danger to democracy and to all progress we have made as a society that has benefited us all. How does corporate America using discriminatory practices against white people benefit us all?
Discrimination doesn't benefit anyone, ever.
Okay.
And the good news here is that's why corporations have been voluntarily taking steps to ensure that they're not discriminating.
Okay.
And that's what we want them to keep doing.
Okay, thank you. Yes or no? You also say attacks against woke radicals are based in a desire to keep us back to the 1950s when black people were segregated. Is that?
Yes.
Okay. Attorney General Rakita, as someone who fights against unequal and discriminatory workplace practices, do you believe the critics of the DEI movement are radicals that want to bring us back to the 50s, or are they just upholding Title VII of the Civil Rights Act?
Clearly, Congressman, they're upholding Title VII. They're upholding the rule of law, and they're keeping things fair for everyone.
What about you, Mr. Berry?
100%. This was non-discrimination and colorblindness are baked into the statute, and that's exactly what we try to vindicate.
Okay, and so how should the EEOC combat these corporate DEI programs?
The EEOC should apply the black letter law and find that attempts to change the racial complexion by these racial balancing schemes are unlawful, as Title VII has always held.
It's important to note that Mr. Berry here is an author of the Heritage Foundation's Project 2025, so it's no coinkydink that he would go along with Burchett and the Republicans' false narrative that DEI programs, which only applies to qualified candidates already, discriminate against white people and should be deemed unconstitutional. This is the Republican Party that will likely win the upcoming election following the attempt on former President Trump's life, unless the Dems listen to the base and give Biden the boot in favor of a younger, more progressive candidate that can offer voters something to vote for, instead of defaulting to voting against Trump and Republicans.